my end to make sure. But yeah, a lot of decisions are coming out, so I decided to go live as we get to decisions. I am using a new platform, so I'm not actually sure um, where comments would come in or things like that. So let's see, actually, there it is, caught up. Um, anyway, so I think we're live. I don't know if we're live. If anybody is out there and I am live, please let me know. Um, so, yeah, I think one of the things that I've been seeing a lot of is like a lot of people are discussing how they're on a streak right now. So that would be a rejection streak. And I would say that's pretty common this time of year because the more rejective colleges are coming out. So you're no longer in the territory where colleges are less competitive, if that makes sense. And so you are and should anticipate anybody in this time frame to be hyper competitive. And as a result, you will receive a lot of rejections. The one thing that I've been emphasizing in the panic report or other places is that, you know, that the chapter might not end well for you in your mind, but it doesn't mean that the next chapter is not worthy. So I hope that makes sense. But yes. So yeah. Anyway, as we prepare for, Ivy Day is tomorrow. I kind of talked about that in last night's panic report. So we kind of discussed anticipating rejection and getting ready for it. It doesn't mean you have to be negative, but you should be willing to accept the possibility that you might be rejected this part of the season and be prepared. One of the things that I like to do for my anxiety is just come up with a plan for how am I going to handle if I get rejected, and also I like to play out scenarios. So if I get accepted into this school, what does the offer need to look like for it to work? What does the money need to look like for it to work? And what do I need to do in order to be persuaded to go to that college? I know everybody kind of gets big on the name brands. One thing that I would say is, I'm not actually sure if we're live on TikTok. One thing I would say is just make sure that you are. I wouldn't announce until you start making a decision. I know it's common for a lot of people to start making announcements. I would not announce until you're making a decision. I don't know if we're live on TikTok actually. So I'm just going to come up with another one just in case. Yep. Okay. Oh, we are live. Okay. I'm not seeing anything. So anyway, um, so I would say it can be kind of not dangerous, but the one thing that I will say is if you get into a big brand name school, there's going to be a lot of pressure to go to that school, especially online, especially, when people are seeing that you got in and you like post that you got in. So what has happened in the past when some of my students have been accepted on Ivy Day is like they'll start getting messages from people that they really don't really talk to, or people from other schools congratulating them, and other people expressing like, oh, I applied, I didn't get in. So not in a negative way, but in a positive way, they're looking to just congratulate the person, and there is a lot of pressure for that student to then commit to that school. um, if you know that there's another contender that is not Ivy League, I would not announce until I know where I'm going. Um, Also, there is this pressure like, I didn't get in and you got in, so you need to go, right? And that's not always the best decision for the student. I know one of the things that I have noticed, and I've even had a parent say this, and I don't know if it's parent driven or student driven, but a lot of people are collecting acceptances just so that they can figure out who they're going to reject. And that's not, or who they're going to put on their flyer for decision day. I actually don't recommend that at all. But I think realizing like this is your process, this is going to be your next 4 years, this is going to be your debt. If you're taking out loans to go to school, is going to be a significant factor in admissions. So be aware of that as you go into these next rounds of decisions. Not everything has to be publicly stated immediately. Um, and kind of have a sense of who am I willing to turn down and who am I not willing to turn down for this particular round of admissions. So, yeah. I think actually I am going to go. It is live, but it's not showing me anything. So I am going to go to our live on here. Let's see. Okay. I think we're, yeah. Okay. So we are live now. And now I can see any comments that are coming in. Okay. So that being said, rejection does happen. And I was asked yesterday, like, why do I focus on rejection rather than acceptance? And that's because rejection is normal during this time of year, especially with Ivy Day coming up. And I feel like if you get accepted, you're typically really excited, but if you're rejected, you don't always have the support that you need. Or if you're waitlisted, you don't always have the support that you need. We can talk about waitlists because I know a lot of students are interested in discussing what to do if you get on the wait list at this time of year. I would say the wait list this time of year moves pretty fast. Like I typically, if a student gets off the wait list, either they get off before May 1st or they don't. So those are the two things. I got into Macaulay Honors. Oh, yay! Is that prestigious? Do you like it? Let's start with that. At John Jay. I've heard of John Jay, so can't be that bad. I don't think it needs to be prestigious for you to go. It just needs to be serve your need. I think yeah. I mean, for me, acceptance rates are more of an indicator of how rich the student population is and not necessarily how many applications they were seeking out and how much marketing they did, and not necessarily good. Does that make sense? Like if a school is good, I'm looking at, do they provide internships? Do they provide externships? How many of their individuals are employed? So like one of the things that I like to do during admitted student day is to talk to seniors and figure out where they're going. If they're not going anywhere and they don't have a plan of support, that's going to be a huge red flag for me. But also opportunities. Like I know one university that I'm thinking of right now in our area, they have students talking about their undergraduate research and all those things that they're doing. And I do find that to be really helpful because they talk about after the first year I did research on this and I did, my professors supported that. It doesn't have to be some big name brand. So like I think yesterday I used Sacramento State and St. Mary's in California as the biggest example. Um, so yeah, uh, I think when you're looking at whether it is important or whether it's prestigious, it depends on the circle, but ultimately you can get a job anywhere. So even though Ryan Coogler is known for his connection to USC, you do see that he went to Sacramento State where he was told that he should be in film. I think that's what happened. And St. Mary's. Those are not really included in the record of his accomplishments for no apparent reason. I don't think Ryan Coogler has downplayed it, but USC is a big name school, whatever. I think you can be successful from anywhere. I think it was actually more, it was helpful for me to go to a state school, Virginia Tech, for undergrad. And then when I went to my prestigious law school, I will say I have friends that went to George Mason. I went to UVA Law. I have friends that went to George Mason. I have friends that went to William and Mary. I have friends that went to Richmond. I honestly didn't see a significant difference. I will say it was easier to get a job at the graduate level, but undergraduate, it really doesn't matter. Okay, so let's see. If an admission counselor gets defamed by their boss to potential employers, should they sue? I would just set up a call with a lawyer for that. I can't answer that because I am still in the Virginia bar. So for me, because I'm barred and licensed, I can't provide legal advice. I would need to know the very specifics of that situation. Even though I am not an active lawyer, I am still a lawyer. So yeah, let's see. NYU or University of Washington or UCI. Those are all great options. So I think the question is like, what experience do you want? What is the core experience? So I think all of those are big names. But I would say, yeah, NYU, University of Washington, or UCI, like they're very different experiences. The one thing I will say about NYU is, can you afford rent in that area? Because that's a significant thing for me when I'm considering NYU. I want to know, can my students afford to be in the city? And can they afford housing? Because I believe in the, don't quote me on this, I believe NYU does run out of housing at times. So you are forced out. So that's my biggest thing. But those are very different programs. I think you have to look at like, what is their staple? Like, are they known for externships or undergraduate research, or are they known for something like that? That's what I would be looking at. I wouldn't necessarily be looking at which brand is better, because again, I don't put a lot of stock in undergraduate brands overall. And all of those are known names, but even if they weren't known names, I think undergraduate education, you should just go to the one that's the most affordable so that you have more money and less pressure for graduate school. Just got rejected from NYU. That's not surprising. Northwestern and waitlisted at Emory. Am I cooked? No, because those are all schools that are highly rejected colleges. So we'll be using this term a lot in the next coming days as we get more and more decisions coming out. But I just got NYU, Northwestern, and Emory is waitlisted. NYU is very particular. Northwestern is very particular. So the thing is, one thing when people ask me, like, am I cooked? One thing that I look at is, are they trying to ask me, like, did I do a bad application, or am I not as qualified as I think? And I think the answer to that is usually there was less qualified students accepted. And once you like wrap your mind around that and then start to realize like this is purely a business decision, this is nothing to do with your application. Like your application indicates you're a good business choice for them. You just probably weren't in alignment. And so therefore you're not cooked, because Emory is saying waitlist is very different than deferred from earlier in the season, but When you are waitlisted, they're saying, we think that you're a good fit for us. We just have to prioritize other people first, right? There's other people who serve their business needs a little bit better. But you're not cooked because a good application could have gotten rejected. A good candidate could have gotten rejected, especially from NYU, especially from Northwestern. Okay. I don't think you're cooked. I think that's just when you are applying to schools with, for me, I usually think less than, I mean, at this point, I'm even at 50-50 odds. But if you're applying to schools with a 90% rejection rate or, an 80% rejection rate, it's like you're playing lottery at that point. And you're just trying to figure out, like, am I aligned with your business interests? Because this is ultimately going to come down to a business decision. Okay, let's see. Okay. I got into Duke and Berkeley. Congratulations. I got waitlisted. Okay, I have to go back up to the top. Stats are not going to help you. Like I tell you all that all the time, stats are not going to help you. Knowing people's stats are not going to help you because there was less qualified people that got in. Does that make sense? So like I could tell you I have a 4.2 GPA. I took 13 AP classes. I did this, and this. I did this leadership. And there's somebody less qualified that also got in. Stats are not going to help you. It's going to come down to alignment and business alignment. Got waitlisted from UW-Madison. What are my odds of truly getting off? Okay, so there's actually a way to look up whether you're going to get off the wait list. And this is based on last year's data. So it might be that they were under enrolled last year. And if they were under enrolled last year, they may pull more off the wait list. They might have done a good job with their targets for enrollment. But you can go under, like what you're going to do is, and I'm going to go ahead and try to do this from my computer, which is still doing the live on this side. So you're going to look up the common data set for UW-Madison. And yeah, okay. For some reason, it just reset to Yahoo, which drives me nuts. Okay, so now I have the common data set from 2024-25. I'm going to open it up in PDF. And then there is actually a category, how many students were on the wait list, and then how many students got off the wait list. That doesn't give you an exact because it might be a completely different year for them. But I will say it's helpful. So wait list, you can look through multiple years, but I'm going to just pull this. Okay, we have first year, first time. That's going to work for me. Okay, wait list is going to be C2. So the C section is where you're looking at everybody. So they offered 12,584 last year at UW-Madison. 7,644 students accepted a place on the wait list, and then 493 students were admitted. So that is 10% would be about 764. So that is a little bit 5%. You have like a 5% chance if you're just looking at everything. Are the wait lists ranked? No. Do they release it to the counselor? I don't know. I would connect with my counselor. I feel like for me, the first step I tell my students to do is connect to their counselor and see if their counselor can make a call. I got into CMU and Duke and Berkeley. Negotiating funding any way you can help a first generation. Okay, so this is how I do funding. And I just negotiated 20 grand off. This is how I do it. First of all, I would connect with your counselor because your counselor is in the best position to let them know. But first, don't send an email. Set up an appointment. Sit down with somebody. It's easy to deny via email. It is not easy to tell you no over the phone or in person. So if you're going to admitted student day, that's a good time to do it. Letting them know the only thing that is preventing me from closing is this particular number is also helpful. Be really, really specific about how much you want in exchange. So I do not do vague offers. I tell my individuals because they're usually using an algorithm that tells them how much is going to cost it's going to cost them to have you close. So that's what their offer is based on. So me saying, I know the student's going to close if you give them between $5,000 to $7,000 is valuable information for them, and then they tend to hit that range if they want it. Now, I will say, Berkeley is probably not going to move. CMU, I thought CMU was on income, right? So they're doing an income base. And I think Duke is doing income, but does Duke do merit and income? Need and income. So let's see. Duke, let me look that up. Financial aid based on need or merit or both. I think they might be. Okay, so there's merit. So they're doing two models. So Duke would probably be the one that I feel like could move the most. I think CMU is doing based on need. Anybody that's doing based on financial need is you're done. Like you would have to prove like I have significant medical bills, I have this or that or this. But for me, I would say I would ask Duke, and I would be don't be outrageous. That's the only thing I have in the past asked for $20,000-$30,000, but that's usually early in the process. At this point, asking for 5 to 10 is usually reasonable. But just be very narrow and then talk to somebody. Like you want to. It is so much harder for them to look you in the face. I think a lot of people resort to emails because it's comfortable. And I feel like every solution that you have, the more uncomfortable and painstaking it is and arduous, like the more steps you have to take, the more inconvenient you have to be, the better it's going to be in terms of the outcome. So like if you email them, they can quickly email you. Typically, when you email them and you ask them for more money, they're going to send you a form letter back being like, talk to financial aid. It's fine, whatever. Admissions is always going to be like, we don't have anything to do with this. Like, this is not our, like, you're going to have to talk to financial aid, and financial aid's not budging. But if you sit down with them and just say, like, I could close if you gave me another $5,000, I could sign and give you the deposit today if I had another $5,000. You're a lead to them. So it's easier for the admissions officer to go get it. It's harder in need-based models. And I think that's what I caution students with when they're applying is like a lot of students are attracted to need-based schools, but the middle class is going to be squeezed the most in those models in my experience. And if you're living in an area like Northern Virginia where your house is your primary source of income, and you have high monthly payments for everything, it's not great to then be applying to a place where you are essentially helping to subsidize the education of everybody else. So you can't really negotiate around need-based programs. You can with merit-based programs, and Duke is doing some merit-based. So I am usually very narrow. I tell them exactly how much I want, and I'm honest. If a student's not going to close, like, oh, well, we're waiting to hear back from 2 schools and we're asking for $5,000, I'm not going to tell them the student's going to close if they're not going to close. But I will say, if you have an intention of closing, it makes it easier. Because of higher courses. that discussing. Okay, let's see. Okay, let's see. Do advocacy calls where my counselor says, if I get in, I will attend, do they work? They don't hurt. Does that make sense? I start with the counselor because the counselor calling for me, the counselor has the most currency in this system. Like I know people are like, my counselor doesn't do anything and my counselor doesn't know anything. I think if you're not using your counselor during this process, you're probably missing out on something. But your counselor indicating I've talked to the student, they want to go, puts you higher in a priority because right now they're using a computer system to gauge your interest. Like they're usually using Slate to gauge your interest score. So like out of 100, how many points based on the activity is this like student interested? And I know some schools will say we're not demonstrated interest, but I can't help but believe if you have a high interest score, it's not going to hurt your application. Um, and seeing who is sticky and interested in the brand is going to only be helpful. Having your counselor reach out because you had a conversation with your counselor to let them know how passionate you are about going is another level of interest that most students don't undertake. And a counselor has to put on their, not like their reputation, but as somebody who's doing private counseling, if I tell an admissions officer this student will close and then they don't, the next season it's going to be harder for me. Right. So there's just a level of credibility from your admissions, I mean, from your counselor that you don't really get from anybody else because they can be frank and have an honest conversation with them. Let's see. What do you mean by Slate? Slate is just the CRM. So Slate is the system that allows them to track your application, but also like we send out this email, did they open it? So your customer relationship management system, it goes through and says, hey, the student opened this email, they click this link. It essentially tracks you and tracks your interest. They attended this event. They reached out to this person. They called this person. Da, 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 da. It's tracking your actions. Okay, let's see. Okay. Okay, you can video Berkeley, but please don't expect anything from Berkeley. I would say out of all the system, the UCs are the ones that are the most rigid and have the most rules. So if they're giving you a tuition discount, it's because, you know, the rules allow it. Does that make sense? Like I find the UC system to be pretty rigid. So can my counselor vouch for Chicago and Emory to help with the wait list? You got to pick. In order for it to be effective, you have to pick. So you have to decide, do I want to go to Chicago or Emory, right? Because if you go in there and you're like, well, I could go to Chicago or I could go to Emory, I'm not, maybe I might make a call, but I'm not putting the oomph behind you. Does that make sense? Like, did that even make sense? I'm not going to put my whole weight behind you if you're still on the fence. So if you want it to be effective, decide where you want to go, right? Decide where you want to go and then go talk to your counselor and maybe even sit down with your counselor and ask them, where should you go? Because the one thing that people don't realize is like counselors, we get a lot of information back from students. Like when I see a student out or they contact me or I sit down with them for dinner or they call me for a reference, I get a lot of information about schools that suck. So sometimes a student's like debating between two schools and I'm like, based on your personality, I would never go there. Like, I think I made a video recently about Penn. And for Penn, I was like, the actions in the video indicate what type of student goes to Penn. And they're very competitive in my experience. Um, they take themselves very seriously. And, I'm not going to send somebody who's not a little bit aggressive to Penn. Does that make sense? So sit down with your counselor, have the conversation, and then come to a conclusion. Having multiple conversations for me is actually better because then they're going to see you make that decision in real time and they can convey that information. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I went over Slate. I went over financial aid. Was there any other questions that I missed in terms of admissions? But yeah, so one thing that keeps coming up is like, if I got rejected here, am I going to get rejected here? Because you're looking at the numbers and you're looking at admission statistics and you're saying, okay, well, if this school rejects, I don't know, 13% and this other school rejects 5%, then if I get rejected by the 13%, I'm definitely going to get rejected by the 5%. Not always the case because it comes down to alignment. How helpful are letters of continued interest? I don't use them. I don't like them. But I think the one thing you have to look at, and this is again going back to the common data set, is whether they track demonstrated interest. If they track demonstrated interest, like Northeastern tracks demonstrated interest. So letting them know I am still interested and having your counselor reach out to say they're very interested is going to be helpful, right? I don't do a letter of continued interest unless there's a significant update. I think the problem with letters of continued interest is like you only hear the stories of people when it works, right? So I've had students, I let my students decide if they want to do it. I'm not going to support or help, whatever. I'll edit, do basic edits, but I'm not doing anything beyond that. I typically do not do them because I've had multiple students do them and they're just not effective, right? So, but when you go online, somebody will say, I did a letter of continued interest and then I got in. Right. But there's also 500 people that did it and didn't get in. So for me, if there's a significant update, like you won an award, you won a program, like you recently were named like a merit scholar or something like that, that's not true for right now, but just in general, then yeah, do a letter of continued interest. Be like, I'm still interested in the school, just wanted to provide you an update. I keep it as short as possible if the student does it. The admissions officers are already burnt out from reading all season. This is like the chill period, so you don't want to do too much. But yeah, do I think they're effective? No, not really. Do I think any of my students who got in because of letters of continued interest? No. I think they just were in alignment. If you're on the wait list, of course, you want to click the wait list. The one thing I say is just open the emails and click around. So for me, I'll open the email, I'll look to see if there's any hyperlinks. I click as many of the hyperlinks as possible. I go to as many pages as possible. I talk to my counselor. I want to show the system, the CRM, that I am interested in it. So like I want to show the software program, hey, she's still looking around, she's still interested, she's still on the hook. But other than that, I don't really subscribe to letters of continued interest. But I don't really subscribe to this process being about standing out and demonstrating interest. I think it comes down to business decisions in alignment with business values and institutional priorities, and not necessarily about who's the most qualified applicant, because they're less qualified students. There are students that have shown no interest. Do you believe that the wait list really means qualified? No, and don't apologize for so many questions. You should ask as many questions as you want because that's why I'm here. So do I believe qualified? Yes. Okay. So if they, this is not the state, this is not early, right? Early admissions plays a lot of games. So in early admissions, I can put everybody on the deferrals. I personally, I mean, in my professional experience, in my personal and professional opinion, I think a lot of schools know that they're going to defer 90% of their applicants going into early, and it's just a scam. Putting that aside, um, if you're on the wait list, that is an easy pull. So they're saying you are qualified, you are ready to go, you would fit into our culture. But there's somebody who has more alignment with our institutional priorities than you do. And we're going to go after that person first, right? So we think that they're a buyer. They're going to actually bite on our offer. But they've already had the option to reject you. If they wanted to reject you, if they didn't think you were qualified, you would be rejected. I don't think most of the decisions come down to whether a student is qualified or not. I think it comes down to a decision of whether they're in alignment or not. And that is just based on my experience. So early in the season, you had a lot of people asking questions like, why, if I'm applying to this school and it's like 60% acceptance, why am I getting rejected? Because you probably weren't in alignment. All right. Like for example, Virginia Tech is a service academy, right? We are very much dedicated to service. If you don't have that in your application and you have no indication of service, then you're probably not in alignment. But like a bigger priority than people with service are the Corps of Cadets, right? So if you are a Corps of Cadet student, you're going to be the top priority. So for me, I would say, yeah, it's a situation where they've already accepted that you're qualified. They've already accepted that you're in alignment. They've already accepted if we have space, we're going to open it up. But it might come down to like, we need more students from this particular zip code, or we need more students from this particular region, or we want more students from this particular high school, or we want more of this type of student. Okay. So, okay, I recently moved up in class rank. Congratulations. And for merit money, and I tried to gain more, but they said no. What do I do? Are you going to admitted student weekend or admitted student day? I would tell them, like, did you do it via email? Let's just start with that. If you did it via email, that's probably the first problem. You did it via email. They don't care about it via email. You have to do it in person. I find in person works. I have driven over multiple state lines just to do in person. So for me, I would sit down with, okay, I would have my counselor reach out in advance. I would sit down with them and say, I want to come here. I am $5,000 away, or whatever the number is, away from coming here. Thoughts? Is there any more merit? You have to realize that the concept of merit aid is a construct or a concept. It's not based on actual merit. It's based on like an algorithm that's telling them, give them $5,000, but don't give them $6,000 because $6,000 is too much, but $5,000 is just enough to get them to close. So you moving up in rank is not going to really change anything because it wasn't truly based on merit in the first place. Yeah, is what I would say. So for me, I would sit down, I would try to get as high in the chain as possible. Like, can I talk to the dean of admissions, head of enrollment? That's the person that might have the pull. But yeah, I would talk to them in person. It's easy to deny you via email. It's not easy to deny on person. Okay. Let's see. I recently moved up. Northeastern or Syracuse, I got into the honors program. Those are very different cultures. First of all, again, I don't think you can go wrong with undergrad. I was talking about Ryan Coogler going to Sacramento State and University of Mary Washington in California before this. I don't think you can go wrong. It doesn't really matter where you go undergrad. Like, I think it does matter sometimes for grad, but even that I'm starting to be dissuaded of. But I will say Syracuse, that's just a very different culture. And for me, like, I would be considering like how cold do I want to be and what type of culture. I will say this: I don't know anything about Northeastern basketball and football culture, so I don't know anything about that. I will say, as somebody who went to a football school, technically, even though Virginia Tech's not good at football, having an alumni come back frequently is a plus, because when your alumni are coming back every weekend for a football game or they're tailgating, whatever, there's just more opportunities to connect. I think Syracuse does a great job at that. For sports marketing, they're one of the best, whatever. Northeastern does a great job with co-ops and internships. So if you want hands-on experience, they do a great job with that, but Syracuse also does a good job with that. So for me, I would look at my advisors in the program. How are people, like, do people actually like the program? What's the shed rate? So like, how many students start out in this major and then finish in this major? Things like that. But I would be looking at the experience, not the name brand, because remember, when we're doing the rankings don't even touch whether students get a job. Like, there's nothing in the rankings that says 6 months from graduation, are the students employed? There's nothing in the ranking that covers that. There's nothing in the rankings for me that's significant enough. I think they're both great schools. I think you could go to a no-name school and be completely fine. But for me, I would look at, I'm a good networker. So going to a football school made a lot of sense for me. I didn't pick that because of that reason, but it ended up being really, really good for that reason. At that time, UVA was still wearing dresses, sundresses, and suits to the game. That's not my culture. So I'm kind of glad that I got waitlisted. Okay. How come I haven't gotten into Binghamton yet? Because they were probably swamped. Weren't they on like a list this year? You think a sibling legacy helps at Cornell? Does Cornell do legacy? Okay, because even if they don't, I know like some people are like, we don't do legacy. Okay, sure, we'll see. I'm sure they do legacy, actually. I don't know. See, this is why I don't like being. Oh yeah, they do. Okay, it's not gonna hurt. I got a guaranteed transfer to Binghamton, and I'm on the wait list for this coming year. How does it work? Well, let's see. So the first thing I would look at is a common data set to see how many students get off the wait list. In my experience, Binghamton doesn't really pull that many off the wait list from my area. So that's it might be that my area is not a dense area for them, but wait list, that means I kind of went over this earlier. You're qualified, you're ready to go. Like, they're like, okay, if this other student that has more alignment goes down, we'll pull from this wait list, and they're going to go based on the priorities that they have. How does it work? I think for me, system schools are very different than non-system schools. So like, I went to Virginia Tech, that's not a system school. Penn State is like a system school. UC is like a system school. You're essentially just doing your generals for 1 year at one school, and they don't have space for dorms, is essentially usually the answer to that. They're just out of space. So they want you, but they also want you to provide your own housing. So look into housing to see if like that's even feasible and can you afford that. Housing off campus. But for me, a system is a good investment because with the SUNY system, you can go to different colleges and take different credits. So yeah. Let me move this out of the way because I'm not sure if I have anything. Oh, hi, Ingrid. Let's see. I got rejected from Vandy, USC, and Emory. I'm sorry. Like I think it's hard. You are with the majority of people, so that does feel better. But just know it didn't come down to whether you were qualified, it came down to alignment, and they just had very particular needs. Which Ivies do you think are better for jobs in computer science than UIUC? So Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. I don't know. I'm partial to Urbana-Champaign because one, football culture, with networking that's better, but then two, they produced the first Black female billionaire, and I'm Black and a female, so I don't know. Like I just think that they have one of the best programs. Like Ivies for me, I think a lot of students apply to the wrong Ivies based on their personality type. Um, which one's better? I think they're all good. Like there's not really a better, but for me, they don't really outcompete Urbana Champaign. I know the perception is that they outcompete Urbana Champaign, but in terms of like graduate students and things like that, I don't see that. Um, but for me, I would say, is there an Ivy that I would consider over Urbana Champaign? Is a better question. Harvard, Yale, Penn, Cornell. One that's close to MIT is probably something I would consider. Um, I don't know. I'm partial to Urbana Champaign. Like, tell me what Ivies you're considering. That would be more helpful. So tell me what Ivies you're considering. Like, if you applied to all of them, which ones are you seriously considering taking it out? Like, I wouldn't do. Not that Yale doesn't have a great computer science program, but I'm not doing it at Yale. Like for me, they're more artsy. But and I don't know. But tell me which ones you're considering. Also look ProPublica for private schools and make sure they're not in trouble. That's a good piece of advice. Um, let's see. I'm sorry that you got waitlisted from Vanderbilt. If it makes you feel better, I didn't like them on my tour. But talk to your counselor, make sure that your counselor knows that you're still interested. Sit down with them, see if they have a contact that they can reach out to. Yeah. I got into Emory Oxford. Oh, congratulations. I remember seeing It's Not Time to Panic on TikTok. Oh, thank you so much. I think I remember, were you in a past live? Emory Oxford, do you still think it's worth, oh, do you think it's worth it to get in severe debt if you know you want to go to grad school? No. No, I don't. No, 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 don't go into debt, significant debt for undergrad, period. Like it's the juice isn't worth the squeeze for undergrad. You're either gonna have to pay for on the job training or like certifications, or you're gonna have to pay for grad school. And then also you have a lifetime cap. So if something is applied in your name, let's say I get out a loan that's not a Parent Plus loan in your name, you only have $257,500. Now, with undergrad being like close to 100,000, which is absurd, and between 50 to 100,000, and then grad school now going up to 200,000, you want the most amount of money for graduate school. I think for me, I noticed when I got to UVA from Virginia Tech, one, it was easier to get into UVA from Virginia Tech. my perception. But then two, because a lot of people from UVA want to go to UVA for grad school, like that. But then two, I noticed that like there were students from schools that I've never even heard of. Like, and I think I talked about this recently. Like, University of Arkansas is having like a generational run at UVA. I don't know why. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know how they're doing it. But like, it's not a school that I expect to come up. Like, for me, I know that the Mormon community is really big at UVA. So BYU was huge during my years, but um, seeing that made me realize like I'm in school with people who went to like Cornell and Harvard and Yale and Chicago and all these other places that were supposed to be better, right? But we're all in the same class and we're all in the same section and we're all getting the same degree at the end of the day. And somebody from like Appalachia is sitting right next to me. And I felt really grateful that I didn't spend a lot. I will say, going into law school, I wasn't worried about the cost of law school because I only spent about less than $10,000 a year for Virginia Tech. I don't think that's possible now, but that's how much I was spending. Um, because of that, taking on $150,000 of debt was not that significant because even though I did get a scholarship to go to UVA law school, I got my scholarship, but you also have to take out money. I was working, but I also didn't want to work full time. So I took out money for living expenses. And that's something that a lot of people don't anticipate. Like if you're doing residency, if you're doing, your boards, if you're doing bar prep, you're going to need money for living expenses so that you can focus on your studies. I will say I would not spend all of my money on undergrad because being able to have the flexibility for grad school is really important. I would also say it allows you to take on unpaid internships or, relocate for a particular program. I think people don't realize like how much some of these programs that are good resume boosters, like I did Sorensen, I don't think people realize how much those can be. I didn't realize that those were paid programs. Those can run you very close to tuition costs. So you want to be liquid. You want to have enough money to have experiences. For me, one of the things that I also think about is like, is a student going to have to work? If one school puts a student in the position where they don't have to work as much or they don't have to work, and the other school puts them in a position where they're always working, I'm always going to choose the option where they're not working. Because a lot of students will be like, okay, I'm going to go to this big brand name school and I'm going to start networking there, but then they're working all the time. And because they're working all the time, their friends aren't inviting them out to events or like, hey, we're going to go see this lecture with this professor, or we're going to go to this dinner with this professor or whatever. They're not being invited to the social gatherings because they're constantly working. And then there's class issues with some of these schools where they look down on students who are working. I think if you can't network, then it's not going to be a great opportunity. Like, I think the thing that worked about Virginia Tech is like I could work maybe 20 hours and be fine. I think I worked a little bit more than that, but the costs weren't so great that I have to save up for law school. I have to take a year off for law school. So yeah, I would not go into debt for anything but grad school and not a master's. I like if it's not 2 to 3 years, I don't want it. Let's see. Okay. Oh, I'm glad to hear that the panic reports are helping. And Oxford's a great place, but just remember, if you don't like rain, don't go. But it's a great program. Let's see. Okay. Is my state school being cheaper leverage Miami price? No. For Miami or any college, they're not going to care what. There are some schools that say if you're going to appeal, we want to see all the letters because then they're collecting the data from other schools. But like saying saying to a college like, hey, I actually got more money from this school, they're going to just tell you at this stage, then go to that school. But telling them the only thing that's preventing me from sending my deposit in is the price is helpful. Does that make sense? Because if they can do something, if you're a priority, they're going to do something. Um, the state school is higher ranked. I would stay in state. Is Miami in state? If Miami's not in state, I mean, listen, I like Miami as much as I can as somebody who went to Virginia Tech. Um, I would. There's alternatives, like look into summer programs at University of Miami. Look into internships at University of Miami. Look at how can I do a year at University of Miami? Look into the master's program at University of Miami. But would I spend more for University of Miami? I wouldn't spend more for most undergrad. So, yeah. Okay. Illinois, Champaign, or Purdue, those are the same college for me. Again, I am Black and a woman. They produced the first Black female billionaire, Illinois Urbana-Champaign, so I'm always partial to them. But I think it's not going to matter where you get your undergrad, because a lot of people don't even work in their major. Like I have a law degree and I'm doing this. You're not working in your major most of the time. Like life changes. It's very rare for somebody to pick a path and stick to it for the entire time. I would say look at what experiences you want. Like, is Purdue known for getting you clinical experiences, or is Urbana-Champaign known for that? Like, what are the program staples? And then I would also look at shed rate. So how many students start in the major of dentistry and then finish in the major of dentistry? If one has a significantly higher, retention rate, I'm going there. So like for us at Virginia Tech, more than half of the engineers are going to drop out. So you have to, if you're going to Virginia Tech, one of the things I tell my parents is if you're not okay paying for a liberal arts degree from the school, then don't go. Like if they drop out of engineering and then they go into political science, which was my major, are you going to be happy with that degree? Do you feel like it's valuable? If they say no, then you shouldn't go to Virginia Tech, because if the cost is not worth it for a general degree, then the cost is not worth it for the engineering degree, because they might not finish. I would just say focus on what you're looking for. Like, does one have, oh, we do undergraduate research and we pair you with a professor or a mentor or something like that? For me, it's the experiences that define undergrad and not necessarily the name brand. Like, do I have an opportunity to do a co-op? Do I have an opportunity to take an internship, a paid internship, and use it as credit towards my degree? Things like that are going to matter to me. Okay. All right. I have to hop off because I have whatever. But yeah. Thank you. Yeah, you're not going to go wrong. I think let's end it with that. You're not going to go wrong in picking a college. Like, I know everybody makes us seem like this is the most important decision, and I think I believe that when I was in this phase. Like, I thought my life was over when UVA decided to put me on the wait list, but it wasn't. Like, the next chapter is going to unfold, and it's going to be magical whether you want it to be or not. I mean, I still cherish my senior year of high school, but like college is a different level. Walkable communities with a meal plan and no parent supervision is a recipe for just joy. But then also having people who written books on the things that you're interested in studying, like that's incredible. I find that students usually end up where they're supposed to be. I would be basing my decision more on culture than I would be based on name brand. Now, if one school has like so, for example, Rhodes College in Memphis has like 100% law school placement rate. Well, I'm not going to ignore that, right? If I have a student that wants to go to law school. But for most other things, you have to decide what experiences you're going to prioritize. Like this school does study abroad and they allow you to take your financial aid with you and they give you a stipend. That's going to, if you're somebody who's really interested in studying abroad, that's something. For Virginia Tech, they were very good at pushing undergraduate research. I think that transformed my experience at Virginia Tech to beyond an undergraduate education. So that I didn't know it at the time, but I was better positioned at Virginia Tech. Um, Go based on the culture and the experiences, meet your advisor if you can for your major, figure out like how, like, and ask them explicit questions. How many students start in this major and finish in this major? Like, those are important questions. But like, what does the world perceive to be the better school? That could change because I think we saw that with the University of Oklahoma, right? University of Oklahoma this year went through it. UVA has gone through it. The market position can change. Hi, do you have any time? Thank you for your time. Experience of financial aid appeals. I went over this earlier. If you're going to do a financial aid appeal, you need to do it. The best is in person. The second best is Zoom. On the phone is the third best. Doing it via email is usually going to get you kicked out. If you go to my YouTube channel, which is under Jen the Tutor, you can actually search financial aid appeals, and I did an entire thing with that. And that walks you through what the appeals are. It's usually like for medical reasons, like you have a lot of medical debt. Your parents have just been laid off from a job or significant change of income that's not tracked by your FAFSA, things like that. But be explicit in how much money you're going to need, and then only focus on the colleges that you're really interested in going to. Like if this college gave me $5,000, I would go. If this college gave me $15,000, I would go. Yes, I would schedule an appointment, but if you can do it on admitted student weekend, even better. If you can do it in person, even better. And don't forget that you can actually usually ask for money to come travel to the school. So some schools do travel stipends to have you come to admitted student weekend. But if you can sit down with the person and try to get as high up in the chain as possible and ask them explicitly, like, if you gave me $3,250, I could close here today. I could give you a deposit today. Think of it like as a used car or a car buy. It's like, if you give me this price, I'm taking this off the lot. If you can't give me this price, I'm not taking it off the lot. The same principle applies. If you tell somebody explicitly, hey, if you give me $5,000, I'm going to close here, then they're going to, if they can do it, they will do it. But one of the things I do like about this time period is like there's no more pretending. Like, oh, we're interested in all students. Not anymore. If they don't care, if you're not a priority to them, they'll let you know. Yeah, I would still reach out. My students are not always eligible for financial aid appeals, but I always ask for more money. But I only ask for more money for colleges that I know that they're going to close at. And also talk to your counselor, because like sometimes your counselor will be able to say, hey, you can, like, they're not really good with financial aid appeals. Hold on, I have to do the puzzle. Oh my God, I didn't get the puzzle right, guys. Okay. Yeah, but talk to your counselor. Like, for example, I have to circle back with another counselor to just let them know, hey, this particular school actually gave me more money on aid, but they were very difficult on the phone. Sometimes, like for me, if somebody comes to me, I'm not going to say which school in Virginia, but like there's a certain school in Virginia, and they're like, I want to do a financial aid appeal. First of all, I usually tell them in advance, like, whatever the offer is the offer. But then second of all, I'm like, it's not going to work. Let that dream die. Does that make sense? There's certain schools that have a good reputation for appeals and other schools that are not. Does Emory give out good financial aid? I thought Emory was on a need-based appeal using, I think Emory's based on need. They might have a merit component, but I think they're based on need. I've heard people appeal use other offers. I don't hand over offers. I usually ask for a specific amount, but if they ask me for the offers, I'll give it to them. Um, but I usually leverage because I know that the offers are valuable to them. So I'm like, if I give you the offers, I'm going to need at least $2,000 off. But I'm in a different position because I'm like working with these people year after year. Does that make sense? So don't assume, just sit down with the person and whatever they ask you for, like have that information available and ready to go, but like don't assume. And then again, do it in person if you can. Because it's so much harder to say. It is so easy to say no over email. It's so easy to say no. Like, do anybody who sends an email for an appeal, like they're just going to send you a standard letter back. They do not care via email. But if you start doing it in person and letting them know, like letting the dean know, like letting the advisor know, like, hey, I'm going over to my advisor. I'm just letting them know, like, I would love to come here. But yeah. Current junior to prepare for college apps. So I'm going to get to that. Take the most rigorous classes. Do not drop a class. Okay, the most obvious example is AP Calc. I have to get off of after this, but AP Calc to stats, like people will be like, well, take stats because it's an easy A. I would rather you have a C in calculus than you have an A in stats. For UCs are very particular about their markets and what they're looking for. If you're, especially if you're outside of California, but just taking the most rigorous classes that you can is the best way to prepare. And then for me, your first semester grades, or your first half of the year grades from senior year, are going to define your system or define your journey. So getting the best grades possible, like if somebody asked me, would I invest in an SAT or ACT tutor, as somebody who used to do SAT and ACT tutoring, or a subject tutor to help the student in classes in their major and making sure that they, in their core classes, are getting great grades, I would always put the money in the grades in the rigorous classes. Okay. But rigorous classes, I don't do passion projects with my students. I don't do like research, like big name programs. I'm not really impressed with, like, oh, I went to this particular pre-college program. They don't always yield and they're not always effective, but classes can make a difference. Okay. All right. I have to get off, but thank you all so much. And I will see you tomorrow because I'll be back tomorrow. Okay. Goodbye, guys. Let's see. End stream.